is presented by Botano. The game starts now. Here are your hosts, Brent Wallace, Jason York, and Bobby Ryan.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Coming In Hot, presented by Botano. Go to botano.ca. I'm Brent Wallace, riding my wings today. Jason York and Bobby Ryan, thankfully, as they've scored a whole lot more goals in the NHL than I have. Gentlemen, it is new season, whether it's off-season or playoff season. Both begin today. Playoffs start later today. But first, boys, welcome. I want to discuss exit interviews and what happened on Friday with the Sens cleaning out their lockers. And guys, one of the most boring days of the year when we come into the locker room and talk to you about the off season and what your plans are, how the season went. You guys have probably just had a party the night before and have zero desire to have any interview whatsoever. Would that be fair?
Completely zero desire on that given day. Yeah. You always have the the full team party, and then the guys' night and the girls' night, or the coaches' night, not the coaches, but the staff night. So you got a couple nights of running around. So yeah, zero desire to get in front of a microphone.
Yeah,
Yorkie.
That pretty well sums it up. I just remember one time it was a couple times we've had a few guys almost miss a 12 o'clock meeting the next day because it's been so rough the night before, and you're like looking at the clock, the coach is coming in, you're like, all right, where's so and so? Is he coming? So no, it's good. It's there's always a few good stories. Save those for story time.
A lot of guys being driven that morning to the rink by their wives or girlfriends, that's for sure.
I do remember one player coming out going, just help me through this. I don't think I'm sober yet. Oh, yeah. So if you – and I'm like, don't worry, I got you. You're going to answer like 3 simple questions and we're moving on. Anyway, we'll get to that after.
Yeah.
So as we listened to DJ Smith and the players chat, it was all good and everybody's positive and everybody wants to come back next year and all that stuff. Did anybody draw anything from that on Friday? It just seemed to be the standard quote. One thing it did surprise me, not one player who was asked said they're going to the World Championships this year, which I found a bit surprising. I know there's weddings and kids, babies and injuries, but I just found that a little bit surprising.
Me?
I'll throw
All
some.
Right, I'll go. There you go. You do it, Erik. You start us off.
I'll throw some gasoline on the fire here. I'll throw a little. I'll stoke the flames here. I'm on the camp of when DeBrincat was asked what he was doing, where, he didn't sound that enthused about coming back.
He didn't.
Usually you'll always say, because people will say, well, he didn't say much because he doesn't want to lose any leverage in negotiations. Listen, usually you'll say, like, when Jakob Chychrun got traded, I love it here. Or anyone's asked, I would love to come back. I love it here. The city's great. The fans are great. Hopefully we can get a contract worked out, instead of, I'm open to anything. So to me, that wasn't a ringing endorsement of a guy that was really excited to sign an extension here. But that's just me. What do I know?
I was hoping you'd missed that comment.
I saw it and I was like, I can't wait till Monday.
and I don't think he was up. I don't think he was out late howling at the moon either. So it wasn't a guy that was under the weather. That was the guy that's like, I'm gonna just not that excited about the thought of coming back. At least that's what I was reading between the lines.
I read the same way. That was a guy that's got a U-Haul outside the apartment right now.
Well, if you want to be blunt.
Yeah, that's the kind of way I read it. But because granted, a lot of guys are very calculated with what they'll give media, and a lot of guys are also very I guess, out there and not cliche. And I think he's somewhere in the middle based on everything that I've kind of seen him say. He gives some honesty, but he also gives he gives some of the cliche. And I think where he was there was just saying, hey, listen, I'm not sure. And there's nothing wrong with not being sure at this point in the game for him. He knows he's going to get qualified, but he doesn't know if he needs to be here long term. There's nothing wrong with what he said. So I honestly read into it way more immediately. And then after thinking about it, I thought, you know what? He knows he's going to be qualified. He didn't have the year that he wanted. Let's see where I'm at next year, kind of thing for him. So I'm not reading too much into it. I'm not.
Just no love. Usually last day people come. I'll bet you that meeting was very, very positive with DJ and the players. No love for the city. Usually there's a little love for the city. And that's what I read into it. Usually you say, it's great. We liked it here. There was just no little pat on the back for the city. But, no little pat on the back for the city of Ottawa.
But I don't think, I don't think he's that type of player. I just think he's very... I don't want to say, I don't mean dull is the word. He's just very quiet and he's very unassuming. And so I just think he doesn't pay any attention. I don't know that he went out a whole lot. I don't know what his personal life was, but I just know he's going to be back. Oh, he's going to be qualified. I don't know whether he's back or not. Yeah. I don't know what's in the meeting, but he's assured of making $9 million next year. So he can really say whatever he wants.
Great.
I don't really
very
do
true.
whatever you want. But now here's the question. Is he in the lineup on opening night? That's the question I want to know.
Rookie.
I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say he's traded at the draft.
See, I'd love to disagree with you, but I can't. I'm with you on that one. I do not believe he's part of the top 6 next year here.
Yeah. The only, aside from his dollar amount, because I actually like the way he plays for the most part, minus I'm not sure he's a big fan of playing in his own end very much. But most high-end players aren't. I don't think Bobby was a great 200-foot player in his day either.
Just take that, Bobby. Whoosh.
It's not even 8:30 here, man.
He's one hell of a skilled offensive player.
Yeah. He's one of the best guys in the NHL at transporting the puck through the middle of the ice on the power play and getting zone entries every time. And I think he's one of the best 3-on-3 players in the National Hockey League as well. But I'll say it again. This is the only concern I have. I truly believe Ottawa is not that far away from being a really good team that's going to challenge in the playoffs. Do you know what's not in the playoffs? 3-on-3 hockey. That's a little bit of a. I know you got to get there and all that, and I just anyway, we'll see how it pans out. I just don't think he's. I think Ottawa's learned their lessons in the past of not getting it done, and then all of a sudden you let it bleed in the training camp, and then you're under the gun to sign the player, and you lose all the leverage, and you trade him at the deadline for a lot less than you would have got at the draft when you got so many more teams interested. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting leading up to then.
I would like to point out that we just had Jason York say positive things about Alex DeBrincat. That's all. I feel like this whole season has now been a success.
Listen, I've said this from
day 184.
I've said this from day one. He is one of the best. I just say it again. One of the best 3-on-3 players in the league. One of the best power play guys in the league. He's one of the best outside the dots players in the National Hockey League. Outside the dots. My concern is the playoffs are played inside the dots. That's my concern. But hey, you still got to get to the playoffs, right? You still got to get there.
Yep.
Very
fair
valid.
Enough. Pierre Dorion, general manager, will speak later today, and so we will have his comments, which are obviously more important on days like this than the players and the coaching staff. So we will hear what he has to say. So on a scale of 1 to 10, Bobby, where do you rank this season in terms of a success?
Well, I said it before the season ever began that I thought the playoffs were going to be a long shot, and I think that there was a lot of excitement in the city and the fan base to be a playoff team. So if you're talking expectations from everybody else or from myself, I would give this a solid 7. Like, they made some major strides this year. They had some young players that came in and took major leaps. Brady got another year of being a captain under his belt and is growing into a very, very good one. Tim Stützle is becoming a generational player in front of our eyes. Jake Sanderson not only was a rookie of the year probably candidate, but my rookie of the year. You figure out the goaltending, you shore up the defense over the summer. You got a great top 6, whether DeBrincat's in net or not, with the addition of Josh coming back. The bottom 6, I think, has to be improved. But I still give it a 7. I think, and here's the words, meaningful games. They played games down the stretch that mattered. They were in the playoff conversation at game 60 to almost 70, I would say, right? And that's a major stride for these young guys. And you really, if you're Pierre Dorion and you're DJ Smith and you're sitting down this week, you're looking at the players that stepped up during those occasions. They were the guys that you have under long-term contracts, right? They weren't, maybe Alex DeBrincat wasn't the best player at that stretch of time, but you're able to walk from that situation. You weren't going to be able to walk from a Tim Stützle if he didn't play well, or a Drake Batherson if he didn't play well. But all of your best future core pieces played great hockey down the stretch and in games that mattered, and that's huge. So 7 for me. I would love this, and they did a lot of this with being decimated through parts of the year. So I think it's a great year for the Sens. I know we all feel like they fell short because we want to see them playing later into April, but we're going to see that sooner rather than later as an organization, in my mind.
Yeah, I mentioned 3 things, but I'll say there were 5 things that happened for me for the Ottawa Senators. 5 huge things. Number 1, this team never really had for a long time, and they have in the past, a legitimate older player that's come in and brought leadership and that could back it up with his play. Like, you can bring in older guys, but if the older guy is not really that great of a player, what he says, the guys are listening, but they're not listening that hard. So Claude Giroux, number 1, him coming in, playing the way he did, and being the leader, which he was. And Bobby mentioned this. What he was doing on and off the ice was infectious for Tim Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, Drake Batherson, and the entire group. So Giroux, and then here's the guy we forget too. Pinto scored 20 goals this year. Pinto scored 20. Yeah. He scored 20 goals, and he had to play against the other teams, usually number 2 centerman. So he learned on the job, and while he learned on the job, he got 20 goals. So the emergence of Pinto, Jake Sanderson, you guys, we've talked about him to death. They've got a young superstar on defense. You got Brady Tkachuk, best power forward in the game, youngest captain, and Tim Stützle. So those 5 things happened this year for the Ottawa Senators. I'm going to go a step higher, Bob. I'll go 7.5. Those were 5 huge things, and along the way, the bottom 6, I kind of liked Kastelik at the end of the year. He was good. He separated himself out of that murky bottom 6. I think he's a guy that is, without question, unless he has a horrible camp, I think he's solidified himself into that 4th line center. And hey, I'll give some props to Brannstrom. He got some ice time at the end of the season, and he took himself out of that conversation with Docker and Clevin for now. Clevin will surpass him later, but he separated himself from those bottom guys, Lassie Thompson as well. So you got to give Brannstrom some credit as well. I really liked how he played down the stretch. So 7.5 for me, but still huge question marks in goal. They have to get that figured out this summer.
Yep.
Very fair.
So here's
Very
a look
true.
at the Ottawa Senators' last 6 seasons, and just you can see some of the improvement that they've gone through. They finished 13 points higher this year than they did last season. Their power play in the top 10. It's the only thing right now, including like penalty kill, goals for, goals against, that's in the top 10. The save percentage needs to be obviously a little bit better than it was, but there are market improvements of where they're at. It's the first time they finished above 500 in 6 years. Like, that's in itself has to be considered a positive. Then you add in 3 30-goal scorers and 6 20-goal scorers. I'm of the feeling it's an 8 or higher. And I'm going to add excitement level to that, because I think based on excitement level alone, and you have no idea what's going to transpire on the ice, and they could be in a full-on brawl in Montreal, or they could be pumping 7 goals into the net on another end. Like, that's the best part about that. They will, I don't know, they'll find you anywhere and they will play that game. I love the entertainment value alone. Whether they win every night, I don't necessarily care that much, as opposed to, I just want to see a really good hockey game. And watching Tim Stützle play hockey is a whole lot of fun. Again, I won't ever probably bring up his plus minus, because I don't care.
What's the question? Was the rating on entertainment value or success of the team? You switched the question.
No, just overall.
What's going on?
I just added entertainment value. Listen, I can add whatever I want to the show, and I can add whatever I want to my opinion.
You're just trying to get rid.
I give it an 8.
You're just trying to dodge that nickname of yours, Brent Bitterbin. Give it in Sens an 8.
No.
You're happy. So, come on, you're not fooling anybody.
And I had a conversation with a fan over Twitter, because Twitter was a little upset with me over the Pierre Dorion comments, which I don't really understand why. I just relayed some facts. So I had a conversation with one of them, and he told me I needed a thicker skin, because he got personal. And I was like, well, I don't understand why you're personal. He's like, you need a thicker skin. So I guess in order for you to yell at me, I just need to be able to take it. So there you go.
Makes sense.
Okay. I'm excited for next year based on the way they finished this year. I'm just disappointed, and as you guys can point out, so you give me the player perspective on that November, and it's November 3 straight years in a row where, and we've used the term before, you can't win the Stanley Cup in October, November, but you can lose it. And that's what they did. They lost playoffs based on how they played it. Why in November, Yorkie? What? I don't understand. What is it about November that's so painful?
2 Thanksgivings.
Well, for this, double dinners, Bob says. That's a each time.
I never saw it that way.
I'll say one thing. Stützle, people forget, like, this was really his first time being a full-time center and having to do it as the number 1 center iceman on the team. Early on in the season, people forget he had his struggles learning how to play down low. He made a lot of defensive mistakes that he had to learn on the job, just like Pinto. So as the season went on, like, his learning IQ was crazy, because he just got better and better. But Stützle got off to a slow start. The whole team got off to a slow start, because that's what happens when you're young. It's 2 things can happen. Either you get lightning in a bottle and you don't even realize the situation you're in, and you just start winning because you're just not realizing the pressure. I think the pressure on the young group got the better of them early. Some guys were in some situations that were new to them. And with Norris out, I don't care who you are, that center ice position, that's the reason they got off to the bad start. You're not going to win in the NHL when you're that young at center and that green. The defense wasn't addressed early on. You started off with that defense, and the goaltending was inconsistent. So there you go. Add all those things up, and you got a bad start.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to add anything to what he said, but there was nothing. They were thin at the center. They were thin with injuries. The defense wasn't good, and the goaltending was suspect. And then everything got better as it went, but it's too little, too late.
How much of then adding new players like DeBrincat, Giroux, Talbot have an impact on how you come together? Do we make it a big deal of, like, oh, they're not gelling, or is this an actual reality when you're an NHL player?
It's not that they're not gelling. It's just the players are trying to find their footing in a new system, new place. A guy like Giroux, who's done it, has no issue with it and has played in the league a long time, and it's different. But some other guys, some other guys coming into a new situation, it's hard to come into a new situation as an Alex DeBrincat and score right away. So I've been less hard on him because of those because I've been through that. It's hard. It's hard enough to score in the league, and then you change everything about your surroundings and your players. It makes things difficult. It just does. I think at some point if we were too hard on him throughout the year, and then I think we were lenient on him a little bit through the middle of the year. But at the same time, there's players that are learning on the fly as young guys, and then there's players that are coming into new situations. It just took all of it time to click. All of it just took time to click. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And when it did, they were one of the better teams in the league down the stretch.
And here's a thing we haven't talked about in a long time. Early on in the season, the Sens power play wasn't very good. And they started off with 1A and 1B. It wasn't until really the injuries came and the team basically went with one power play, because DeBrincat got off to that. He came from a place in Chicago where he was staying on for 1:40 of every power play. And then once things got sorted out and Ottawa went with their group, which was Stützle, DeBrincat, Batherson, Tkachuk, and it was Shabbat for the most time when that power play was really cooking back there, they really got into a groove. How many games did they win based on just having a great power play and a few timely saves? There was a lot of times. There were a lot of times that power play won a ton of games, and to me, it took a while for them to get in sync as a group. But once they did, that was probably the second best power play in the NHL for a stretch. The first best for a while. It was really cooking.
Yeah, very much so.
Bobby, do you remember your first month for the with the Ottawa Senators?
I do, because we had that nightmare stretch of it. I think we started 6 on the road or something like that. I remember going to Buffalo, Toronto, coming home for 2 days, and then going right into Death Valley out west on that trip. Because I think like my third or fourth game in the uniform was out there in Anaheim for my first game back. So I remember I didn't score in the first 2 or 3 games or something like that, and the sky was falling. And then I went on a little bit of a run. And I think our power play clicked a little bit in my first month. I don't know where we were standings wise. We might have been close to 500, but we felt confident at close to 500 because of that trip. Like you start 6 on the road and you come back just under 500, you're pretty happy.
So it's interesting because I'll say tore it up in your first 16 games, which is basically October 4th to November 7th. You had 9 goals, 18 points, and the team was 6-6-4. And on that Western trip, LA, San Jose, Anaheim, you score all 3 of those games, just to show all your friends back home how good you were. Like that's got to be a pretty good feeling though, to come in your first month after it was a pretty big deal. You're here to replace Alfie, sign a big deal. At least you were able to put up points.
Yeah, it helped. I think, when I got traded here, the big thing was about, getting Spezza a winger again. And we lasted about a game and a half before Paul said, it's not working. And we were like, a game and a half. Okay. And then I remember we just jumbled something up just to try something new. And then Spez went back to, I think, with Colin Greening and somebody else that he had some familiarity with. And I started a game with Kyle Turris and Clark MacArthur, and the 3 of us gelled immediately. Specifically, Clarky and I, we just kind of played really well off of each other. And Turi was like the perfect center for our game, being as reliable as he was. So our line ended up being so good that Paul and then whoever else came in for that year just couldn't change it. No, it was Paul for the whole year. We were the, arguably the top line. I think sometimes whatever line Spez was on was still the top line because it's Spez, but
sure.
The 3 of us really played well together and found some consistency. So, it was a letdown because I really wanted to play with Spez. I think if we had more time, we would have really played well together, but it was hard to switch that up. And it helped me immensely coming in and playing well out of the gate.
Who assisted on your first Ottawa Senator goal?
Erik Karlsson and Mika's a bit no. Erik Karlsson and Milan McCulloch.
The power play specialist, Chris Phillips.
Was it Philly that walked the line and gave it to me?
It just says power play goal by Chris Phillips, Erik Karlsson. I'm like, wow. I'm thinking it was a line change.
Yeah, it must have been. It must have been towards the tail end because I just remember walking down and blowing it over Jonathan Quick's shoulder, and I had a great screen in front by whoever it was.
Very good. All right, we're going to move on. Story time is coming up, but first, as always, everybody's favorite sponsor reads. Today, you know what, Bobby, you can have Renfrew Pro Tape and Yorkie gets PGI. Okay. here we go.
Okay.
This show is always proudly sponsored by Betano, where things are about to heat up tonight with the NHL playoffs getting underway. Go to betano.ca, download the app, all kinds of live in-game betting, hundreds of options each and every game, parlays, bet builders, all kinds of stuff at Betano, where I have so far given them all my money. Betano.ca, where the game starts now.
As always, the show held together by Renfrew Pro, the original hockey tape. Fun fact, all 16 teams in the playoffs use Renfrew Pro. It's hand tearable, moisture resistant, helps with puck control, and you can use what the pros use if you go to all major retailers. It's available everywhere. Also available at renfrewpro.com. You can't miss it. It's the one with the green core. You can give them a follow if we can change the graphic for me at Renfrew Pro for
Terrible.
Free Tape Fridays. If you get in there, tag your teammates, you get unlimited entries. You can share to your story for 10 more entries and have a chance to win some tape for the boys in the locker room. Renfrew Pro. Feel the game.
I love that line.
10.5.
It's awesome. I love the line too. It's hand terrible.
Hand terrible.
It could mean two things.
Not when you're
hand
6.
terrible if you're strong enough.
Yeah.
People might think it makes your hands terrible.
I could tear a phone book.
When you're 6, you're still
All right.
biting it. I know that.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to have terrible hands, though. Anyhow, that one flew over you guys. Bonisher Excavating.
No.
Helping to make the Ottawa Valley a better place. What are you talking about, no?
We all understood it. We just didn't want to play along with it.
Okay. Thanks to Bonisher Excavating for equipment rentals, aggregate and topsoil sales, custom crushing and screening, haulage, floating, highway maintenance, concrete framework. When you're planning your next project, consider BEI for your aggregate supply needs. Give them a call at 613-432-1120, and you can find them online at bonisherexcavating.com.
Also, just a heads up, they do driveway paving and sealing. So if you're in the Renfrew Valley and things are starting to heat up now, you want to get your driveway done, give them a shout. 613-432-1120.
Yes. And
all right, gentlemen. Yeah.
And also, don't forget to slow down in construction zones.
Love it.
He's on it.
We are rolling today. You know what? If you didn't mess
Boom.
up aggregate at the top, I'm giving you an 8 because you're
Thank you.
Also because of your hand terrible joke. Yeah. So Alex, fire up story time. I got some questions to ask about exit meeting interviews. I do love this. Okay. Gentlemen, tell me about exit interviews and what they are like. Are they good? Are they bad? Are they ever contentious? I'm going to say Yorkie has more of those because it's a little more old school. Bobby, what's your recollection of exit meeting interviews?
Well, they're good, they're bad, they're contentious, so they're all over the map, and they're all different for every single guy that goes into that room. You can go from a guy that had a great year to a guy that's going to go in there and just get lampooned. So it's always interesting when you're like, hey, you're all sitting around that room, and you know how long they take. They allot for 7 minutes or 12 minutes or whatever it is, and then they blow it out of the water by 45. So it's the longest day of the year. I had a couple. I will say, one of my favorite stories, and it was actually one of the first times I actually sat with Eugene at the end of the year. He picked 6 or 7 guys, maybe, give or take. And this is the story about how we ended up with a lounge that rivals any teams in the league. I went in with Eugene. It was his first meeting of the day. It was noon. So, nice to meet you, Bob. We sat down, and before the meeting, his assistant came in and said, "Can I get you anything?" So just nothing for me, thank you. And I was nervous. I hadn't really sat with Eugene before. And I think he just wanted to get to know me because we talked a little bit about hockey, a little bit about the Sens, and then we talked books and different things. And it was just a feel out meeting, I could tell. But when his assistant turned to him, he said, "What could I get you?" He said, "I'll do a hot dog and a Mike's Hard." I said, "What?" I said, if we were doing that, I would have joined you, And I was 26 at the time. So I sat there with Eugene, and I talked to him for a good 45 minutes. It was a great conversation. And I left and I thought, I've never experienced that before. Mike's Hard Lemonade and a hot dog. So, each meeting goes a little longer. Then I said to Philly, did he have a hot dog or a Mike's Hard? He said he had both. And I thought, okay, because Philly was after me. By the time Carl went in at the end of the night, and it was the last meeting of the day, somebody said to Carl, you can get just about anything you want right now. So Carl goes, okay. Texts us and goes, I got a $75,000 lounge. Remember that one? And then I remember that was one of my favorite meetings actually ever with a person in hockey. Honestly, jokes aside, he was awesome to talk to. And I will say the other one about the late, great Brian Murray was that when he was trying to fight Colin Greening, and I think this one kind of came out a little bit when him and Colin Greening got into it. And it was the same day that somebody had asked Colin Greening, what's missing from your game? And Colin Greening goes, ice time. So I guess they kind of got into it. They were both, Greening was an imposing guy. I don't think I've ever played with a guy that big and strong. Honestly, jacked, worked his ass off in the locker room, in the weight room, excuse me. But I remember they kind of went back and forth, and it was after he had signed the extension, and Colin essentially said, you ruined my career. And Brian said, well, you might have ruined mine with the contract. And I guess a couple of people had to get up inside and get inside the room because they were standing on one side of the desk, and Brian was ready to come around to greet him. And I thought, man, I love that guy. I wish I had more time with Brian Murray because he was just all honesty, all truth, and a spitfire. So those were just two good ones off the cuff.
I remember I had Brian his first year when he came back from coaching. He had coached the Florida Panthers, and then he resurfaced in Anaheim as a head coach. And I think it was like 9 years or something since he had coached. And I don't know if he used to do this in Ottawa, Bob, but if we were screwing up the passing drills, Brian would, give me a puck. Someone get me a puck. And you'd give him a puck, and someone would have to go with them, and they'd go down the ice, passing the puck back and forth. Then Brian would slowly cruise in on the goalie, take a shot, and of course the goalie'd let it in, and the whole team would cheer, and we'd get back to the drill, and long and behold, we'd do the drill great after that. Like and his practices weren't that tough, eh? Like, I remember his practices, it was all he cared about, at least when I had him, was make sure the passes are on the tape. But what a beauty, eh? Like, and that comment he made for Greening, that was no delay as well, eh? Like, it was like 1 second. Well,
Right
you probably ruined my career. Right? You probably ruined my career too.
Yeah, so I never had him as a coach. I only had him as a general manager. I would have loved to have had him behind the bench. I heard a story, and they were on the ice one time, and they had rookie party the night before, and all the guys were hung to the gills. Some were still drunk, and he blew practice down, and he singled out one guy that was the worst player of practice. And he said, what the F are you doing out here? Are you still drunk? And the player said, I don't even drink. And Brian turned around and goes, well, maybe you should start. And I wasn't there for the story, but I just heard it. I thought that knowing Brian a little bit, I said that fits the bill 100%.
I only really had one confrontational exit meeting, and it was in Anaheim too. And I basically said I called the assistant coach out because all the players knew he was a weasel. All the players knew he didn't have our backs, and all the players knew. And then I just went in there and I said, listen, nobody's fooled by what you're doing. Like, we all know you're an imposter. And we went at it for like 10 minutes, and I knew I knew I'd get traded the next year. But man, that's the nice thing about those meetings. If you have enough, usually older guys have to do it. It always happens after a bad year or something happens. But man, I had it with this coach. I was so happy I said something after, because the guy was just a complete imposter.
Yeah, I like that.
So what were Guy Boucher's like? Because he's very cerebral. I think of, you played for Paul McLean, Dave Cameron, and Guy Boucher. Would Guy's be the most in-depth?
By far. Yeah, by far. A lot of coaches go based on the end of the year on feelings, right? And how they felt you played and how they can, and what you need to do for the team to be better. I only had one exit meeting with Guy because he was, let go after the deadline that following year. But that being said, we had a great run that year. So the meeting was good to begin with. And we talked about my regular season not being great. And he's like, I need playoff Bobby from game 1 the next year and things like that. And we had really, really good conversations, and him and I were drawing on the board and going back and forth in it. And, I've spoke extremely highly of Guy the entire time. I absolutely love playing for him, but he helped me through a lot that year. It was the beginning of some tough times for me that are very well documented, but Guy had my back and helped me through all of them. So we probably the best exit meeting I have actually ever had was with him. And just a very cerebral, analytical person. Really, really awesome.
What has been like, I guess, was there ever one that you were like, man, I get Yorkie kind of alluded to his, but you were like, this coach doesn't get me, or this just doesn't feel right, or it's not my place to be? Like, was there anything that just felt off in any of your meetings?
Yeah, for me, I think my exit meeting the year I got traded out of Anaheim, it was so short and quipped that, and Getzlaf and Perry had signed those mammoth deals, right? We lost in Detroit to round 1, and those guys had already signed those deals. I knew, because I had no trade protection, that I wasn't coming back. I knew that the moment they signed, and they signed in January and February, so I played out the rest of that year essentially, and just knew when I walked into the room that it wasn't coming out, because there was no real feedback. Gabby, Bruce Boudreau, gave me some things to work on, kind of thing, but it wasn't like what we need from you. It's what you need to work on, and that was different. And then my meeting with Bob Murray, was weeks later. I got a text to come in, and my meeting was about 3 minutes, and I just walked out of there, and I was like, whatever's left in that locker room, I better go grab right now, because I just knew it was coming. Yeah.
Did you take all your sticks?
You know what? It was funny because the room was already shut down by the time he actually called me. Because I had talked to a couple other players, and I said, have you guys had meetings with Bob? And they all said no, because Bob likes to let things digest a little bit and then come back to you. And when he did get back to me, I'm honest to God, I was not in that. I drove 45 minutes each way for a 3-minute meeting. And I was like, well, I think we could have just had a phone call. So I just knew. I knew as soon as I left that room, I was like, I'll never walk through these halls again on this side of the room. I just knew.
Where was 45 minutes? Where'd you live in Anaheim? Which area?
You know what? It's 45 minutes with traffic, but I was by Fashion Island, right off Jamboree and Newport Beach there.
Newport Beach. Is that where most of the guys were living?
Yeah. All the young guys lived down there because it was cheap rent, right? The beach towns during the winter. I had owned a house, but I got out of that gauntlet that is Balboa down there and moved to the quiet area of Newport. But yeah, guys have moved on from that area, and from what I understand, are now in like Corona Del Mar.
Yes,
because
what an area! Right?
Yeah.
That's one of my big regrets. Mid 90s, I'm going down. What's this Corona Del Mar place? Wally, you've been down the Corona Del Mar, right? It's basically just past Fashion Island, Newport Beach. Fantastic. And back in the mid 90s, man, you could steal a beachfront place back then. Not so much anymore.
No, not at all.
Listen, guys, when I worked on the road, I didn't go out anywhere, so I don't know any of these places. I just stayed in my room.
Well done. I lived in the Back Bay. I loved it. There, living wise.
So last question before we move on to playoffs, and Bobby, I just want to know, like, when you're walking out of that hallway where you've been drafted, you've played your career, you've got 4 30-goal seasons, is it bittersweet? What's that feeling like?
Well, I guess the feeling was regret, right? Because we had some really good teams there. We just could not get past the Detroit Red Wings. They just matched up extremely well against us, and I think if we get past them in 2 Game 7s, we have a good look at a cup run. So a little bit of regret. We knew we had a very, arguably one of the better lines in hockey with Getzlaf, Perry, and I. We knew we had some depth. We just didn't get it done when it counted. So there was a lot of regret. I knew I wasn't coming back, but the other side is like, you're kind of excited about where you're going to end up, because I had no idea at this point it was going to be Ottawa. I had heard Philly. I had heard San Jose. I had heard some really good places too. But you just don't know. So I guess I left with some regret and a lot of uncertainty about what was coming, right? You're young. I just bought a house. I had just, kind of moved in and, was starting a life there. So when you know a lot of changes are coming, you got a lot of uncertainty feelings. That's for sure.
It's amazing how that works when when you buy a house. It's almost the kiss of death. It's within a year you're usually traded.
Yep.
It's great. Same thing happened. You bought a house 6 months later. See you later.
Yep. Very much so. Yep.
Was it DeBrincat? Somebody was traded to Ottawa who had just bought a house, and they were like, "No, you're kidding me."
Oh, okay. I know that it was Christian Dvorak had just bought a house and then got traded to Montreal like days after buying the house.
Yeah,
I remember that one.
Think, it might even been DeBrincat thought he was. No, Dylan DeMello. When he got traded to Ottawa, I think it was. He had literally just signed the deal, and he told his wife, and she's like, "No, you're lying to me." All right. So I keep saying last question. Do you guys hang out on locker cleanout day, or do you get out of there as soon as your meeting's done?
I remember my meeting. There was usually a jet on the runway for me. I'm not gonna lie. So I remember Mark Crawford's like, "When are you leaving?" And I said, "When's our meeting over?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Danielle and the kids are waiting for a phone call. I'm driving this car to the dealership to drop back off, and I'm getting picked up, and we're getting on the plane." Because everybody knows how much I love Idaho. I could never wait to get back to Idaho. And I just never, I would always stay for the year-end stuff, obviously, but I was always just, when you're done, it's time to go home and it's time to reset. So I never took vacations. We never really wanted to do that. We just wanted to get home. So I was always gone the day of or the day after.
Yeah, unfortunately, I would stay until June. Kids in school, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I never had any of that. So, yeah, young kids, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Stay right till June.
Out the door.
In the room that day, are you, Yorkie, did you hang out? Did you want to talk to guys, or is it like, I'm done, we've had enough time together?
No, I usually organized a little get-together for later that day for the guys that were staying around. We'd go meet again because you were out the night before, and then you're going to do it again. Like, you're going to blow off some more steam. And usually I'd be the one organizing where we were meeting that next day. Maybe a nice sunny patio, maybe a nice Caesar.
No surprise.
And then you off you go again. Actually, you know what we used to do in Ottawa? My job in Ottawa was I would always organize the Molson bus. And we would get this bus, and Molson's would give it to us for the night. And we'd take the bus downtown, and we would stop at all the bars, and the whole team would get off the Molson bus on Elgin Street, and you could just see 25 guys going to a bar, and we'd stay in that bar for whenever, an hour, and then get on the bus, and the bus just cruised around. It was like clockwork for five springs. The Molson bus did a tour of downtown Ottawa, and then we'd end up at one of the guys' houses. And this is kind of funny. Back then, all the guys lived in Canada Lakes, and the Molson bus takes everybody after the bar back to Canada Lakes. So picture this. It's like 4:30 in the morning. The bus stops. I think the after party was at Red's house. And when a bus stops, it makes that big
Yep.
So 4:30 in the morning in a quiet residential area, the Molson bus pulls out in front of the house in a quiet neighborhood. You hear that noise, and then 20 guys get off, and the party starts again. So, and I think I lived about 20 houses down, so I just cruised home after that. So, good times on the Molson bus.
All right, that as always brings an end to story time, as we've got to move this show along. Otherwise, I could ask you some more questions. Okay, here we go. It's time now to put in our playoff picks, brought to you by Botano. Go to botano.ca. The game starts now. There is a lot to get through. So we got to go through 8 series here. We just want to know who's going to win how many games? We're going to do the first round. We're going to start out west. So, number one, I think we're starting with Colorado, Seattle. So this one's interesting. It's the first time that a franchise will play its first ever series against the reigning Stanley Cup champions. As we know, Seattle had a really good year. But Colorado, down the stretch, had the third best record in the National Hockey League since January 1st when they went 32-11-4. Bobby, you're the Western guy. I'll start with you first. Who are you picking in this one?
I'm taking Colorado. I mean, I'll just be brief with this one. Colorado, I think it's 5 or 6 games. I think Seattle will find a way to win a home game.
I need 5 or 6. You can't pick one.
I'll take 5. I'll take 5. I think Colorado wins at home, and Seattle finds a way to go back there for game 5 by winning one at home in front of their fans, but they're just too deep.
Yeah. Same with me. Avs in 5. I think Seattle gets one at home.
They've still got some. They've done some pretty good stuff this year. They can score goals. All right, you're gonna go 5. Let's go Colorado in 7. I think Seattle can still play. They play an in-your-face grinding kind of game. I think they can still hang in there. All right,
I like that.
Moving on.
Yep.
Dallas, Minnesota. This one's interesting. Dallas finished 5 points ahead of Minnesota in the standings. Both played really good seasons. Dallas, since the February 1st, is the 7th best team in the National Hockey League, and Minnesota is 9th. All right, Yorkie, you get to go first.
I'm going to go with the underdog here. I like the moves Billy Guerin did for Minnesota coming down the stretch. I can see them stealing one in Dallas to start, putting the heat on, and I'm going to say Wild in 7.
Okay.
I'm just going to do the exact opposite. I think this is going to be one of the best series of the first round for me. And it's a series that I'm going to watch a lot of. I'm just going to take the team with the better special teams and go with Dallas, but I think it's going to be a 7-game series. So Dallas in 7.
I like Jake Ottinger and the way he's played. Stars in 5.
Nice.
Okay.
Somehow there has to be a little bit of upset every once in a while, and I think you'll see some team just get really hot. I like the Dallas Stars. All right, and finally in the West, Edmonton, LA. Edmonton was on fire. January 1st, second best team in the National Hockey League. They went 37-7 in their last 44 games. They own the best power play in the league. 10th best goals against. Their penalty kill, though, is a concern, which always seems to be a concern in the postseason. Bobby, who are you taking?
See, you know what, though? Their penalty kill is actually better than LA's. So if you're giving me a bad penalty kill against the number 1 power play and the hottest team in hockey with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, I'm taking Edmonton. And if I'm Edmonton, there's one team I don't want to play. Excuse me, it is the LA Kings. But right now, they're too hot. I think Edmonton's got as much of a chance to win as anybody right now. So I'm going to take Edmonton, but LA doesn't lay down. It's going to be a 6-game series.
Yeah. No, I loaded up on Oilers in my pool. McDavid's on a different planet. Draisaitl has proven to be one of the best playoff players in the league. I love this guy. He's so good when it's tight spaces. I'm going Oil. I think they're going to come in and roll them. I was going to take a sweep, but I'll go Edmonton in 5.
Okay.
Does goaltending concern you?
Not a ton.
Well, your boy Skinner. He was hot down the stretch. One of the top goalies.
I just put him on the list because he's a goaltender. He's actually played really well, but he's a rookie goaltender. That's my only concern. But maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe they don't pay any attention. They just play.
Yeah. Maybe it's a good thing.
All right. I'll throw this out. I meant to mention this before. The first playoff series between the Oilers and Kings, which was back in 2022, last year, Connor McDavid matched the NHL record for most multi-point games in a single round with 6. McDavid 14 points overall, which equaled the most by any player in the first round in 29 years. I guess it just feels like Edmonton's probably going to come out on top. So Oilers in 5. I don't want him to waste any time. What did you say, Yorkie? You had the Oilers
5.
in what?
Oilers in 5.
Okay. All right, on to the West, or on to the East we go, shall we?
Nope, we got one more.
Where are we starting? Oh,
we got
sorry.
one more. Vegas and
That's right.
Vegas and win.
I apologize. The Mark Stone one. See, Mark Stone comes back. He's all healed up, ready to play in the postseason. They 3-0 against Winnipeg this season. They were really good down the stretch. If that really, I still think the way you play going into the playoffs is important. I thought they were pretty good down the stretch. Since February 1st, Winnipeg is 22nd overall at 14-14-2. While Vegas was the second best team since February at 22-4-5. Bobby, you take who you want.
I got Vegas in a very, very close series. I think Winnipeg is built for the playoffs with their size. But I still just have to. I like Vegas. I think I agree with a lot of what you said, but I think this is a 6 or 7. I'm going to say Vegas in 7.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got I got Vegas. I agree. Who's going to be there? Who's starting in nets for Vegas come playoff time? That's my question. Is it Jonathan Quick? Wally?
Nobody knows, right?
I don't know. I would assume so.
Yeah, you would assume, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is he? He's got pedigree. I know he's older, but I like Vegas. I like Vegas. I do agree with Bob on Winnipeg. Man, they're big, they're heavy, but you got a rested Mark Stone. I'll go Vegas in 6.
All right. Vegas in 6 for me as well. I don't know. I don't like the way Winnipeg's played down the stretch. And I always remember Curtis Lecision a long time ago with the Sens, and they didn't play well down the stretch. He goes, you can never back into the playoffs. If you're not playing well going in, it's usually a quick out for you. I can't see him being any different. All right. On to the East. Look at how quickly we rolled through that, gentlemen. Good job.
I like it.
Oh, here we go. So Boston, Florida. Do we need to spend any time on this?
Nope. Yorkie, you lead us off. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Florida wins a game in this one. Maybe 2. I think Florida's. I'm going to go Bruins in 6. I think Florida's going to surprise them, give Boston a little bit of test, but then Boston's going to figure it out and win it in 6.
It's exactly what I had written down. Boston in 6.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Boston
Florida wins one
Ottawa.
home and wins one on the road.
Okay.
They split the first 2, and then Boston figures it out.
Boston and Ottawa, the only 2 teams Florida and Ottawa, the only 2 teams this year to beat Boston more than once.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think you may have a chance. I do like the way Florida has played.
Yeah.
Again, it comes to goaltending for me, though.
Yeah, and it looks like Lions the guy. I don't trust goalie Bob in the playoffs. I think they go with Lyon. I think Lyon's the guy that starts.
I think so too.
Boston in 5. They're just gonna have one bad game at the beginning because they haven't had any any kind of adversity all season long. So they'll have one of those games. Is this gonna be like Tampa though, where Tampa rolled to 62 wins and then got swept by Columbus?
It could happen. It could happen.
No, not here. No, I don't see it.
All right. Next up, Carolina and the Islanders. Boy, this was that division was a dogfight this year. I do like Carolina the way they play, but the Islanders down the stretch certainly played really, really well. So, Yorkie, who you got? Carolina and the New York Islanders.
Man, I hated how Carolina played in that game against Ottawa. And that was a game that they kind of needed to solidify winning the division, but it was the end of the season. Man, they just have such a hard time scoring, and I can't stand their power play. Their power play looked terrible. I'm taking the Islanders. And I love Pajot in the playoffs. The Honey Badger in the playoffs.
Yep.
I'm gonna take me some Honey Badger. I'm going with the Islanders. Matt Barzal is healthy. He's going to be back in. And they brought in Bo Horvat, and they get pretty good goaltending. This is going to be my one upset in the first round. Islanders over Carolina. In
what?
7. 7.
I already
Okay.
I already had it written down. I have the Islanders.
No, you
7 as
didn't.
well. Yeah. I did. I
So
don't
Carolina
even care
has
about the
won
head-to-head.
3 straight games.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. They've won 3 straight.
I just
both
both these teams know how to win in the playoffs, by the way. Like, both teams have been to the conference finals. I think the New York Islanders they barely missed the Stanley Cup a couple years ago. So they've had some guys that have been there and been through it, and so has Carolina. But I just think they're bigger and heavier, and it's going to be a big series. It's going to be a big, heavy series. And guys like, they're not going to hide, but guys like Aho and Teravainen, they're not going to be able to do what they want to do as much as they have been in the past. So, yeah, I like the Islanders a lot.
And they've got a big and Carolina. Wally, Carolina's missing Svechnikov too, and he's one of those guys that's big, strong, and skilled. They're going to really miss him in the playoffs.
Yep.
Carolina, I can't go against my boy Calvin DeHaan. Carolina in 6.
I like that.
There you go.
Because I want to see. I mean, I do like Pajot, but anyway, they have the 30th power play. If that doesn't work, they're not going to win many games for the New York Islanders.
True.
We'll see.
Barzal's back. Right. Barzal's back though. He's the guy that stirs the drink on that power play. He's back. That power play is getting an immediate boost.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's move on.
It's gonna be a great series.
Okay. New Jersey and the New York Rangers. The battle of the, I guess, crossing the Hudson. The Devils were 3-0-1 against the Rangers this season, and we've all seen how well they played. Who do you like in this game? Bobby, you can start because Yorkie keeps taking all your picks.
Was I torn on this one? Because of the playoff experience, I edged towards the Rangers a little bit. But very hard to disagree with the year that the Devils have had. I just don't see a way that the Rangers' depth and experience doesn't come through. So I am taking the Rangers, and I'm going to take them in 7.
Man, again, Bob, again. I'm going.
No way.
The moves they've made, but my biggest reason is Shesterkin.
Yeah.
He started to play a lot better in the second half, and I think he's the best goalie in the game right now. Debate with Vasilevsky. I'm taking DJ, Zbad, and the New York Rangers in 7.
Mika Zibanejad turns 30 years old, I think, tomorrow. So based on that is the reason I take the New York Rangers. I just like Mika Zibanejad and the Rangers. I think their goaltending is the difference in this one. So Rangers in can I say 7? I'm going to say 7 too.
There you go.
So finally, we come to the Leafs and Lightning, which for our little area seems to be one of the most exciting ones because, well, they're 2 pretty good hockey teams, but are they really down the stretch that good? I didn't like Tampa's game, right? Since February 1st, they're 24th in the league at 14, 15, and 5. Yorkie, you take Toronto. Are you a Toronto guy, Yorkie, or are you going to stick with the Tampa Bay Lightning and Nick Paul?
I am a Ryan O'Reilly guy. I love Ryan O'Reilly. Love how he plays, and I like how Achari plays. I like how Jake McCabe plays. If they can just get decent goaltending, I think they'll win this series. I think this is the year that Toronto exercises the demons and beats Tampa in the first round. I'm going to go Leafs in 6. Wow. No,
oh my God.
Great minds, man. But for different reasons. Tampa's exhausted. They look exhausted. They look fatigued.
Yep.
They for the first time ever, they look tired of John Cooper, and that's not a slight at John Cooper or the players. I'm just saying they're all tired of being around each other. they all want a summer of rest. It's got to be exhausting going that deep 3 years in a row. I'm taking Toronto because the Leafs are exhausted. I'm sorry, because Tampa's exhausted. The only thing that bothers me is, does Vasilevsky turn it on?
Steal it.
And if he does, they can steal. But I just think Toronto finds a way. They made all the moves that they needed to make. They're big. They're heavy. Their goaltending's the only thing for me. But outside of that, I think they find a way. Toronto in 6.
I just don't like their goaltending, and I wonder if Tampa has one more run left in it before it's got to find some new pieces. So Braden Point's a 50-goal scorer.
Mm-hmm.
I like Victor Hedman in that blue line. Andre Vasilevsky is the difference. Tampa in 7.
Not a bad call though.
I can't.
This is such a pick'em series.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy? Nobody even talked about Victor Hedman this year. It's almost like he's just kind of resting and recharging, getting ready for maybe one more playoff run. But the Leafs can't lose again. They can't lose
regular
again.
Season rocking chair.
Yeah, he just if Toronto loses, they will burn that city down, right down, and I think they're all gone. If they lose in the first round, everyone's fired. They're going, and from president, GM, everyone, they're all done. I think if they. So the pressure. How about the pressure on Marner and Matthews? Like that is incredible right now. To me, this is the can't miss series to watch.
Agreed.
If you can control Marner and I guess Matthews, can you win the series? And then by that I mean, remember when Yorkie, when you had Yash and Buffalo just shut him down, even though he was the Hart Trophy finalist. If you can do that to those two guys, can you win this series?
No,
that
because
seems like an obvious answer.
Because Nylander's been good this year, and he was decent in the last. I think he's learned some lessons of how you need to play in the playoffs. Yeah, and I still like John Tavares. I think he's such a smart player. He's so good. He's so good from the hash marks in around the net, tipping pucks. Not enough people talk about him. And look at their defense too. Giordano, he's a guy that's almost done. They got some storylines there that lead me to believe that once they get winning, the media is just going to eat up like the Giordano story, the Ryan O'Reilly stories. So I just think they're deeper than they've ever been. They've got some grit. They've got some size. And you're right, though, Wally. The goaltending, I just think it has to be good. It doesn't have to be great. I just think it needs to be decent.
Yep. All right.
Agreed.
We'll see how this all plays out. Until tomorrow, gentlemen, when we discuss General Manager Pierre Dorion's comments at his season-ending press conference, we will sit and watch the playoffs that begin tonight. So have a great day. Chat with you tomorrow.
Just can't wait. See you, boys.
See you, fellas. Enjoy night 1 of the playoffs.
Coming in Hot is brought to you by Botano.ca. Please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel to never miss an episode.